My name is Jain Elliott. I'm from New York. I went to school there and then came to San Francisco. And then I came up here to work at Starflower, a wholesale natural foods collective that was mostly lesbians. And I had come to the fair as a day person and just thought it was great. And that winter we got a postcard from Community Village saying we're doing a little multicultural outreach. We'd like to get some folks in the village who are a little different from most of the folks that are already in the village. Would somebody from Starflower like to join us? And my colleague said, "Here, Jane, this one's for you." And I went to a village meeting. Skeeter Duke was the facilitator. Marshall Landman was there. Robert Despain, Norma Sachs, a bunch of fabulous people. I just loved it. I came back and I said, this is so fun. We're going to get 2 passes. Who else wants to come? And I got Sally Shecklow, who was known as Hayfield then. She writes Living Out for the Weekly, and she's part of Wimprov, but those days she was a hippie from Starflower. And she camped with me that year, and next year she was on the village council, and she introduced the Hokey Pokey to the village, which many people still love, of which I have long wearied. I still love her, but the Hokey Pokey is not my favorite memory of camping with Sally, or Hayfie as she was then. That first fair, I just, I didn't know much, so I showed up Friday morning. Everybody had already been having fun, but we put up our tent, I think, kind of where the yurt is now. There was a little blank space, so we put it up. And we're part of the fruit booth. Starflower was a food booth, and the fruit booth was composed of 4 different retail food co-ops then, and just sold fruit. And we were a wholesaler of mostly dry goods, so we brought nuts. And the big joke was, they were the nuts who brought the fruit, and we were the fruits who brought the nuts. And we thought that was just, everything was so wonderful then. We had a great time. I was cutting watermelon, selling it to the folks. I was a bookkeeper at Starflower, and I did receivables. And a lot of the co-ops, they might not have been able to pay their bills quite on time. And I was, the one who's going to decide whether they got their order or not. I was the person in the superior position. I got out to the fair and I was like, maybe I should have taken the whole hit. What do I do next? And they were like, oh, Jade, it's going to be fine here. Just, do this. It was great. It was really fun. I just loved it. And I remember I'm not sure what year it was. I'm thinking 78 or 79, but it was the year that the gutter people had come back from their sojourn in Paris, doing street theater there, and renamed themselves Du Caniveau. And they were doing a thing in the path. Extramarital relations don't always turn out like you think they will, which was screamingly funny. And they would, change partners, and then every now and then they changed partners to be a gay couple. And I was like, oh my God, every part of my life is being blessed here. This is just so great. Which, it's. So we'd go back, and I'd say to the other Starflower girls, come on out to the fair, come on out to the fair. And they'd say, oh, Jane, it's really not that much there for us, But this year, here, I'm going to just do an advertisement right in the middle of my interview. This year, here in the village, we are, having this Rainbow Tribe Center. They're going to be in my booth, Little People, Saturday night. They're going to get dressed up for a drag parade, and then they're going to be a presence in Peace and Justice during the fair when the fair is open, and be going out throughout the fair to make LGBTQI folks remember that that we're all here, and so that's another circle that's come around for me. I was in the fruit booth for about 2 or 3 years when I fell in love with a Hodad who wanted to have a kid. The Hodads were large. Starflower was a small worker-owned cooperative compared with the Hodads. They were a huge worker-owned cooperative composed of various crews who had tree planting contracts throughout the Northwest. And I had this one that I was having a fabulous time with, and he wanted to have a kid. And I was like, I work all the time, I can't have a kid. He said, well, I'm getting tired of working in the woods. You're making enough to support 3 of us. I will stay home and take care of the kid. I was like, wow, so many of my friends had gone through, a lot trying to find a donor. And here I had a volunteer who was, a lot of the guys that I had hung out with, all of the guys that I had hung out with were guys who were never going to threaten to support me. They just, for some reason, the compromises that a straight man has to make to succeed in this culture made him unattractive to me. And I was attracted to, hippies, rebels. But Ed, even though he, had a good job and was pretty responsible, I thought he was cute. And so I got pregnant. And then I had a baby. And then, there I was in the fruit booth trying to cut the water. And I felt so, I was taking up a whole path, but I wasn't really. So I thought, well, maybe I'll have to take a little time off. But I went to the village meetings anyway. I loved those village meetings. We would sing these, loving songs. And I loved it. And at one of the meetings, there was a gal who'd been coordinating the Little People booth, and she said she wasn't coming back to the fair, and did anybody want to take that on? And that's where I've been ever since. My darling boy, was a fair boy. The year he could go to the fruit booth by himself and get blueberries was a big year. The year he could, go to Springfield Creamery and get an ice cream. Whoa! The year he could go all the way to Tofutia. Whoa! And then, as a teenager, there was a space where he was too cold for the fair, and that was a little sad for me. But then he went to read, and his friends were, "Whoa, your mom's part of the fair. Could you get us a teen pass?" Whoa! And now he's on admissions crew. He still works in our booth a lot. He does decon and gate, and he's the greatest. There was a Facebook thing that Hillary posted last week. Have you ever noticed how people say, I grew up at the fair? They don't say, I grew up coming to the fair. And he commented, oh yes, my life was in stasis for 360 days of the year, and then suddenly I grew psychically and physically on the 8, back when it was just an 8. It's just so cute to have, all through the fair, there are multi-generational families who remember their kids as toddlers and kids at the fair. And it's just, I'm so, Ed and I did not stay together, but whenever I think of him, I think, what a great idea he had to have a kid. He was not a fair person. He was a Hodad who planted trees during the winter, and he fought fire with Forest Service during the summer. And he really wanted his Forest Service colleagues to respect Hodads, and his Hodads buddies to think more of the Forest Service. And he thought it would be real good to get together a Hodad crew that would fight fires, and then they could make money in the summers too, the way he was doing. And the Forest Service would see what fabulous workers they were. And he got this crew together. It's called East Wind. And he trained them, and he was really proud of them, and it was going to happen. And the first real big fire of the year was Thursday before the fair. And we didn't have cell phones then, so he came out. They're all working security. So he came out here and he said, "Come on, let's go! It's time to go fight the fire." And you can imagine what they said. So he was, when I met him, and I was like, okay, I'm going to the fair now. And it was like, okay, bye. But, I think, he had that great idea. I will say that more and more and more people is the biggest change. Every new area of the fair needs a crew, and when the crew gets larger, they get more passes, and that has been true of every crew except Community Village. Community Village has got 264 passes. When I got here in 1978, it still gets 264 passes. But what has happened is that our kids have to go and get passes elsewhere. Our kids can't stay in the village pretty much. Or many villagers go out and have positions of responsibility elsewhere in the fair. Many board members are from the village. Our co-treasurer Hillary Anthony is from the village. Norma Sachs, our office manager, is from the village. Others, join other crews and come by here to remind us how much they love us. But when I leave the village and I go out into the rest of the fair, it's really big. It's amazing. And most of it is fabulous. It's just, there's so much there that was so different when I first started coming here. Some of it's sad. Where I camp used to be surrounded by greenery, and now there's little bits of greenery that we try our darndest to preserve in between our camps. My tent is the same size it was when I was camping with my little boy, who got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I had a compañero a lot of the time. And I still camp in that same tent, even though it's, I keep thinking, well, maybe I'll get an SO again someday. I'll have room for a friend. But and there's still, especially my friends still have, little backpacking tents. But I was just out in the swamp, and there's huge tent. It's so hard to get a little tent if you don't have a lot of money, and you want to get a tent for the fair. There are no small tents for sale. They're just all big tents. And that's where the greenery went. And the other part is, of course, I'm sure many of your interviewees have mentioned that we used to be able to walk around the fair at night and, go from little acoustic jam to little acoustic jam. And now all the stages are amplified at night, and it's ga-boom, 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 boom, boom. And a lot of people really love that. My own precious darling son really loves that. He loves to wake me up in the morning after he's been up all night and take me out to breakfast at Cafe Lafayette that he says has had just the most fabulous disco party all night long. And he's so happy, and I love him so much. What can I say? Get an acoustic, honey. For me, not that much has changed. I'm somebody who loves the stages. I have a little list of everything that's going to be on the stages that I put in my pocket every morning, that day's list. I try and hit those stages. I try and hit Ducanovo, at least once during the fair. I'm wild about the one where the recycled clothes, whose name is just slipping out of my mind right now, over at Stage Left. And what I especially like is if I can find one of my friends who I've persuaded that they really need to come to the fair, and if I can be escorting a fair virgin, that is the most fun, is to take them to a show, take them to the sauna, just take them for a walk, take them any old where. I love that the most. It's the greatest. It's something we've talked about in Elders, that we would like to offer that service, to just have a little booth, a little place in the still living room where we'd be sitting around saying, Fair Virgin, need an escort? Want to know where everything is? We'll find out what you want to see and take you there. It's fun. Well, I really love what we're doing with spoken word. I really feel like it complements what we're doing in the village to There used to be a restaurant in Eugene called Egg Snatcher. I used to believe that we would prevail by stealing the eggs of the rich people. We would seduce their children. We would say, look, you don't have to be, you don't have to hold on to your money hoping to buy some happiness. You can have happiness with us. It's really fun. And I feel like that's, still what we're trying to do with the fair, is to say, look, it could be like this. We could love each other. We could live lightly on the earth. We could, take joy from the homemade, supporting artisans, supporting acoustic music. Supporting acoustic music. And, I feel like, most people who come here, they get it. They say, oh yeah, it really is. It really could be. And that's my vision for the fair, to deepen that, to intensify that, to find ways to, meet the visions and dreams of the people who come here hoping for what we have, and to show them that they can take it home and do it. I want everybody to come to the fair. One year I was the high bidder on CALC, Community Alliance of Lane County, in the Peace and Justice booth, their big fundraiser. I was high bidder on a hippie bag, and I got various hippie things: a roll of tie-dye toilet paper, a bag, a carry bag with peace symbols, some goofy stuff, and 2 tickets to the fair. And that year I had retired. I taught school in Oak Ridge for many years, and I had been retired for a year or so that year, and I had accepted friend requests from many of my ex-students on Facebook. So that year I posted, I have 2 tickets to the fair. Let me know if getting to come for free would make a difference for you in coming to the fair. I'm especially talking to my ex-students here. And them, the first one who answered was one of my ex-students, said, yeah, that's me, I want him. And I called Norman, I had to mail him out to him. I really want everybody to come. So when I'm with my family of origin in New York, if any of them show just the littlest twinkle of wanting to come to the West Coast, I say, you should come the second weekend of July. We have a big party in the woods. I'd love to see you there.